Recoding variables. For this tutorial, you will have to download and open the recode.save file. In this tutorial, you will learn how to recode and transform variables. Recoding variables is a highly useful tool in SPSS. It allows you to change your variables in several different ways. So for instance, we might want to change a continuous variable of age into a categorical variable that represents different categories such as youth under 18, young adult, middle-aged adult, and senior adult. We might also want to collapse categories of a categorical variable if one or more categories has too few cases in them. So let's say for instance you have a sexual orientation variable with the categories of heterosexual, bisexual, lesbian, gay, and queer. You might have too few cases that identify as queer, lesbian, or gay exclusively. And you might want to consider collapsing so that you have lesbian, gay, and queer under the same category, with your new recoded variable having three categories of heterosexual, bisexual, and let's say gay for instance. So let's give it a try. Let's take a look at our data set. In this data set we have two variables. One is age in years and the other is years of school. We're going to run two recodes to produce two new recoded variables. One will represent a categorical variable of age, and the other will represent a categorical variable of education. And we're going to collapse some of those categories in our education variable. So let's take a look at these variables in more detail, starting with age. Click on the variable view to bring up the variable view pane of the data editor to take a look at our age variable. We can see that age is age in years. There are no coded values for this variable. And we also see that the level of measurement is scale. Now what we want to do is code this into a categorical variable with four categories representing those under 18, those that are young adults between the ages of 18 and 34, middle-aged adults between 35 and 64, and aging adults 65 and up. To do this, we'll need to access the transform menu item at the top of the screen. So let's do that now. Bring the mouse over the transform menu item on the top of the data editor window. Click. And what you'll see is two different recode options. There are other options here, including compute new variable, count values within cases, and so on. But we're just interested in those recode options. You'll notice that there are two of them. One is recode into the same variable, and the other is recode into different variables. We always want to choose recode into different variables, and this is why. If we recode into the same variable, SPSS will change the variable entirely and will lose the original variable. We never want to lose data. So sometimes, for example, we might make an error. And if we make an error using recode into same variables, we'll lose the original variable and we won't be able to get it back. We always want to recode into different variables. So let's select that now. Bring the mouse over recode into different variables. Click. And you'll notice that the recode into different variables option window has opened up. The first thing we want to do is select our variable that we wish to recode. In this case, it's age in years. So now we can see that that's already highlighted. We can click on the middle arrow to bring it into our input variable box. And what you'll notice is that age has now showed up in our box, and it is there with an arrow pointing to a question mark. SPSS is basically asking us what we'd like to name our new recoded variable. After we're done, SPSS will add this variable to our data set. So we want to choose a name for our variable, and again we want to make sure this is one word, and let's call it cat_age, and we'll label it categorical age variable. And then click Change. The next thing we have to do is click on Old and New Values. After clicking Old and New Values, you'll notice that the Recode into Different Variables, Old and New Variables window has opened up, providing different options. The left hand of the screen is asking us for old values we would like to recode. So again, we want to recode our age variable so that it includes 4 different categories, and we want to start with those representing persons under 18. Notice that there are several different buttons we can push. The first is value. We're not going to select that because we know that there is a range we're interested in, those under 18. So right now we're going to select range lowest through value. So let's select that now. In the box you can type in 17, and we just want to keep this simple and start at 0. So again, we're telling SPSS to code all those under 17 as 0. Once you've typed in your values under old value and new values, click add. You'll notice that a list has begun, and the first thing on our list is our first recoded category of lowest through 17. Our next category will represent young adults, 18 to 34. So now we have a range here, different kind of range that represents an interval between two different ages. So let's select range here and type in 18 through 34. And we want to place the new value here at 1. You'll also want to be careful when you are creating your categorical intervals because you don't want them to overlap. So notice that lowest through 17 doesn't overlap with 18 through 34, and we'll create our next category that represents middle-aged adults between 35 and 64. So again, our range is already selected, so let's type in 35 through 64. We'll want our new value to be 2 for that category, and let's add. Now our last category is aging adults 65 and up. Now we can click on the range value through highest button and type in 65. I want to type in 3, and this basically tells SPSS that everyone 65 and over will be collapsed into one category. Let's click on add, then continue. So now we're pretty much done creating our new age categorical variable. So we can click OK, and the output window will come up, provide us with our recode command. We could always recheck it to make sure that we didn't make any errors. Let's go to our data view window. Now as you can see right away, we have a new variable. You should notice that our original age variable is still here because we didn't recode into the same variable. Otherwise that variable would have disappeared. Otherwise we would have a new age variable, but our old variable would not have remained. We can see our categorical variable is here, but there are still some things we need to do with this variable. So I'm just going to do a few things. One thing is I'm going to bring the decimal places to 0 by clicking under the decimals column for my categorical variable of age, clicking on the box and bringing down the numbers and bringing down the decimal places to 0. I also need to label my values. Right now it's none. If I had run a frequency command on this variable, what I'd see is a frequency table that just contains my value codes of 0, 1, 2, and 3. But I want to include my labels. So let's do that now. Click on the box under Values, under the Values column for our categorical variable of age. Click on the Call button. Our value label should open. And now we just want to label our value codes. So we know that 0 was our first one, so just type 0 into the value box. You can tab over to the label. And remember, this represented those under 18. So let's just type under 18. Add. We know that 1 represented young adult. So type 1 into the value box. And we can type in young adult. And click add. Remember that 2 represented middle-aged adults, so we can type that into the label. Click add. 3 represented aging adults 65 and up. We can just label this aging and click add. Now we can click OK. You'll notice that our value codes have now been recognized by spss. And the first thing we want to do after creating a new recoded variable is run a frequency command to make sure that there are no errors. So let's do that now. So you want to click on Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequencies, click. When our option window opens, you see that our categorical variable of age is there. We want to bring this from our variables list over to our right box here under variables. We want to display frequency tables. You want to make sure the display frequency tables is checked. And let's just click OK. So you'll notice that the output window has opened up again, and our new categorical age variable is there with our 4 categories: under 18, young adult, middle-aged adults, and aging. This looks pretty good. There are no stray numbers under our first column. And it looks like we have successfully recoded our age variable into a new categorical variable.